Are you ready for Season 2 of Discography? I'm your host, Mark with a C, and Discography is a show where we look at a great artist through the lens of only their canon albums of first release material to see who they really are and how it all stacks up. And you should know that for Season 2, we will be discussing the albums by the one, the only Janet Jackson. Singer, songwriter, dancer, actress, a household name, one of the biggest stars the Western world has ever known, and though she sold over 100 million records worldwide, few have really poured through her canonical albums to see how they stack up. From her unsung early recordings to the genre-defining albums Rhythm Nation and Velvet Rope, all the way to 2015's Unbreakable, we're taking the deepest dive into Janet Jackson's studio records one can possibly imagine. Season 2 of Discography premieres on July 17th, 2018, only on Consequence Podcast Network.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Wherever you're listening from right now, hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with this series. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, Brooke Annibale. She's got a brand new record called Hold to the Light. We're going to talk about how it was recording really far in the corner of the country up in Maine and finding a bit more of an electronic sound than what she had had in her past. There's also some inspiration that she got from Robyn. We'll discuss the power of a Spotify playlist and how one of her songs ended up in Grey's Anatomy and the effect that's had on her own TV watching habits. It's Kyle Meredith with Brooke Annibale.
Hey, Kyle, it's Brooke Annibale.
Hold On to the Light is just this beautiful record. Once again, we are so thrilled to have new music from you. And I wanted to, get the ins and outs of this record, too, starting with where you recorded it, because this one was up in Maine, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, what was that like up there? Because quite the different scene from your last ones.
Totally. That's kind of what I was looking for. I had made all of my last records in Nashville, and this record I made in sort of the middle of nowhere, Maine, a town called Parsonsfield, Maine. I worked with Sam Kassir, who owns this studio up there that is an old farmhouse that he converted into a studio. It's still also a house, so you go up there, you live there, you eat there, you work there, and it was a really cool experience, a totally different vibe than previous recording processes for me.
I know location can play into inspiration quite a bit. Do you find that in this record? Do you find that that being kind of secluded, not just in the woods, but way up in the most corner part of the country too, kind of, arrange the sound of this record?
A little bit. I'd say that the environment definitely crept into the sound a bit because I did all of my tracking in this little tiny wooden room that, you could hear the rain on the roof, for instance. And so that made it into the track of one of the quieter songs, and it sounded really cool. Otherwise, I feel like I went into it with a really clear intention of what I wanted to do and experiment with, and Sam was on board with that. So I feel like just the new team of people kind of influenced the sound more than anything, but definitely the experience of being sort of secluded altogether up there influences how you make the record.
And that sound, knowing what kind of sound you want, there is a bit of a different thing for you going on here. What were you looking for?
Well, I've always liked, indie pop music and have been listening to a lot more of it, and personally had always primarily written with the acoustic guitar, but with this record, I started writing a lot with my electric guitar. And so that at the foundation, influenced the sound of the record because I was starting with an electric bass, or foundation rather, not literal bass. And so, I wanted to play around and experiment with different, more electronic sounds because the idea of fusing those more organic sounds with the synth sounds or something, it really inspires me. I like hearing those two worlds kind of collide, and that's what we went for on a lot of these songs.
It's so well done. The production is just so well done, and that's kind of the first thing I hear. Beyond just a great song or whatever, it's like how the layers just kind of all fit together so easily. That's That's not something that people can pull off every single time.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's a line, I think you had said somewhere, I don't remember where now, but you'd said maybe the record is about figuring out what you need to feel more complete. What is that?
Mm-hmm. I think that, I guess sort of all of my songwriting process, like my whole songwriting process is basically just a therapy session, for whatever I'm going through or processing. That's sort of how it started when I was a teenager and throughout, my 20s, and now I'm in my 30s. And I think this record was really taking a closer look at what is going on in my life and what do I need going forward, and how do I relate to the people around me in these relationships. It's always my songwriting is pretty relational based, but I write a lot in transitional periods, and that's, a lot of change and a lot of figuring out what to hold on to and what to let go of. And that's sort of what came out in this album cycle,
And when you say relationships, I mean, are we talking like relationships with your partner or just relationships in general with everybody?
Yeah, with, family, and in a larger way, like how we relate to just all the people around us. But definitely, I mean, your relationships with your partner or whatever are going to influence a lot of what you write about. It's on your mind a lot. So I've written a lot about family relationships in the past, and people have thought it was about, a love relationship. And I just sort of have to say, well, I'm glad that, that's how you relate to it. But it's cool when people take other meanings from what I'm writing about.
I mean, you're quite poetic and sometimes not in a vague sense, because you can always tell that you're telling a story, but it's almost like whatever that real story is, it's just a little bit hidden. It's just a little bit in the background. And I just wondered, do you do that sort of on purpose, kind of obscure it just a bit?
I think so, yeah. I've always liked songs like that where you can't they're not so literal. So I've probably been subconsciously influenced by that and do that in my own writing.
I did hear that at some point, maybe it was a song or maybe the whole album, I don't know, but you did take some inspiration from Robyn, which I thought, if that's true, it's nice and timely because she's back.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Yeah, we were, Sam and I, the producer, we were working on the song Glow, which started out just as I had written it on my acoustic guitar as just like this sweet little acoustic song. And we were tracking that, and he started playing something on one of his keyboards that I said, have you ever heard the song Dancing on My Own by Robyn? And he's like, I'm not sure, if I've heard that. And so we took a break for dinner and I played it for him, and he realized why that reminded me of that song. And that sort of was our influence for the rest of the song, which obviously is not quite as, pop as Robyn, but totally, I love that song, and it just sort of influenced the rest of our production of that.
Yeah, well, Glow's a hell of a song, and we're also big Robyn fans around here. So, for what it's worth, we've got both of you all in rotation right now at the exact same time. So it worked out.
Super cool.
The universe put it all together for you. I do want to hop back a little bit beforehand too, because your last record, which we had, which we absolutely loved around here, it had some pretty good success to it too. I didn't realize that the song Answers had taken on what seems like a life of its own. I mean, 6 million streams alone on Spotify. That's pretty great. Is that from just playlisting, or was there something attached there with a placement?
It actually is just from a super popular Spotify playlist called Your Favorite Coffee House.
Uh-huh.
And it's been on there for well over a year now and has a couple million followers. So yeah, that song is my most streamed song on Spotify. So I sort of took it out of the archives because I wasn't really playing it that often. I joke that it's kind of like one of the saddest songs I've ever written, but it's my most streamed song. So it says a lot about, what kind of music people are into out there, and everybody loves a sad song every once in a while.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, though? And there's always been something that's, whether it was, big radio airplay or when a band landed on MTV in the 80s and 90s. And these days, you have a person in an office who decides that this song, from whatever reason, is going to go on a playlist, and suddenly, an artist's life has changed to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool, it definitely sort of snowballs into other people listening to the rest of my music, which is really cool. I mean, Spotify playlists have sort of a greater power than, an iTunes, or they have equal power to an iTunes placement back in 2005 or whatever,
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
And you get a lot of placements too, TV placements in shows. Does that influence your actual watching habits when you know that you're going to be a part of a show?
Totally, yeah. I mean, one of my first placements was on a show called One Tree Hill back in 2011, and or 2012, I guess, was the placement. And I used to watch that show all the way back in high school. It had been on for so long that I started sort of like catching up on what was happening, so that I would know what was happening in the scenes that my songs were in. But most recently, I had a song on Grey's Anatomy, which was awesome, and I can't say that I had ever been a loyal fan of Grey's Anatomy, just because I am super squeamish and like can't look at like blood and surgery and illness. It just, I get freaked out. So that was one of the only times I watched like a whole episode of Grey's Anatomy. But my scene was, clear of any of that stuff. So I got to fully enjoy it, and it was pretty cool.
That is really cool and very funny too. Well, Brooke, again, I want to congratulate you on a beautiful record with Hold On to the Light. Again, we're such big fans around here, and always happy to hear new music coming from you. And hopefully we'll see you back around Louisville at some point soon. Yeah,
I'm hoping to make my way down there sometime in the next year. So.
Well, even if you're passing through, which I know used to happen quite a lot, give us a honk and a wave, I guess.
Totally.
All right. It was great talking to you, and take care, and we'll see you around.
All right, you too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Hey, big thanks to Brooke Annibale. The new record, Hold to the Light. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, whether you're listening on YouTube or the podcast version at iTunes or Podchaser, or wherever you're getting it from. Also, give it a rating. Leave a review if you are so inspired. After that, you can head to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern. You'll also find some bonus episodes of this series over there. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.